Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I've been going out with a girl, her name is Julie, but last night she said to me when we were watching telly.
Anne wants to speak to us from Blackheath in London. Tell us what you think, Anne.
Hi, Maajid. I'm really, really angry with you. You allow...
Let's begin with the racism I just read out to you. Are you angry with that?
Not on race issue. I would never, ever lower myself to...
No, I'm not asking about whether you're a racist. I'm asking about why one of Corbyn's supporters, the first reaction that I've just received from a Corbyn supporter is a racist reaction. Do you agree that Corbyn supporters have descended into racism, Anne? And do you agree that Corbyn supporters have descended into racism?
Anywhere.
And do you agree that Corbyn supporters have descended into racism?
Well, it shouldn't happen, should it? But
well, has it happened? I'm asking you whether you agree it has happened.
yes, if that's what the person said to you, of course that's happened. But I don't think it's a general thing.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
You know...
Do you care for my lived experience?
Make anti-Semitic.
And do you care for my lived experience?
I hear people make...
And do you believe I have a lived experience that you should take seriously?
I do take it seriously.
Right, well, if I tell you my lived experience is that Corbyn supporters are regularly racist towards me, and if I then couple that with the Jewish lived experience that they are regularly racist towards Jewish people, would you take that seriously and accept that it's not just a one-off text?
I wouldn't support anyone who was anti-Semitic. I never supported anti-Semitism.
That's not the question I asked you, Anne. Now, please pay attention to the question and listen very carefully to it, because I'd like a specific answer to it. Do you agree that if my lived experience informs me that Corbyn supporters have regularly descended into racism towards me, and if the Jewish community members that I speak to also say that their lived experience is that Corbyn supporters have regularly descended into racism towards them, would you accept that it's more than just one isolated text?
Oh, of course it's more than one isolated text. Of course it is.
Mm.
But you know what, Maajid? I was told I didn't have long. You've taken me down a path I never wanted.
No, I'm going to give you the time now. I just wanted an answer to that question. Now, thank you for answering it. Now you can say what you wanted to say.
Anyone who's racist, anti-Semitic, no matter what platform they sit on, no matter if they're Donald Trump or
Jeremy Corbyn.
Anybody else
Or
Jeremy...
Donald Trump or Jeremy Corbyn, right?
Sorry?
I said no matter whether they're Donald Trump or Jeremy Corbyn, who has endorsed anti-Semitism, including and not least the mural that he refused or opposed being taken down in East London, which was an anti-Semitic mural.
Come on, get over yourself.
All right, thank you very much. And we're going to go to Taylor on the line from Coventry. Tell us what you think, Taylor.
Hi, Maajid.
Welcome.
Right, yeah, so I just think that it's all scare tactics, to be honest with you.
What is?
No deal with Brexit, you know. I think we should go through it. We've been, how long now? Nearly 2 years. We should just go through it now, because it's all lies, you know. I heard say there was a medical thing that they couldn't get enough tablets. You know, I don't know where these tablets are made, but say, for example, it was made in France. France is a 10-hour drive. If you're that desperate, why can't you just go there and get them?
Oh, my God.
Why?
Taylor, did you hear yourself?
No, it's the truth, though, you know.
Why can't you just drive to France to get some tablets if you're worried about medicine shortages after no-deal Brexit?
Yeah, why not?
Are you serious, Taylor? Have you heard yourself speak? All right, hold on, Taylor. Let me just... Oh, my God. Look, if I'm not crying, I'm laughing, I'm crying. Okay, Taylor, look, okay. My friend, my beloved fellow citizen, Taylor, after we Brexit, the whole reason there may be medical shortages is because there will be border checks on goods as well as people. Because you, I imagine, don't want freedom of movement, right? So how am I going to just drive to France to get some tablets if you've just cancelled my freedom of movement? There will be queues. And then when I bring those tablets... Hold on, Taylor. When I try and bring those tablets back, right, you think they're just going to let me waltz on back into the country with what will then be illegal drugs? You're turning me into a drug trafficker, Taylor.
There's other countries that sell them, you know. Look at America, Australia. So they're not part of the EU, so why... But
we don't have a trade deal with America, Taylor.
Why not? Why not? As soon as we leave the EU...
We don't have a trade deal with America. Taylor, when you say why not, because we had one with the EU, so we didn't need one. And now if we leave the EU, we will not have a trade deal with America. So we can't just buy their medicine. We need a deal in place first.
Well, that should make things complicated, isn't it? Like, you can. As soon as we leave, we're open, you know. EU is not going to stop trading with us. because they're going to lose business.
No, well,
manufactured.
No one wants to stop trading with us. The question is, we need a deal in place to trade with people. Can we get a deal in place before there's medicine shortages? And the deal takes, Taylor, how long? How long does it take to negotiate a trade deal?
As long as they want it to be.
Well, no. Okay, if you're, Taylor, let's see, what work do you do, Taylor? What's your job?
Lorry driver.
Right, so if you're a lorry driver and you want to buy a new lorry, okay?
Yeah.
I imagine you need to agree on terms of sale.
Not really. I've rented trucks out before. It took an hour.
No, I mean, to buy a lorry, you need to agree on the price, true?
Yeah.
Right, so now...
If the price is right, you can get it.
Yes, correct. So now, take that to a nation level, okay? When you say, why won't there be a deal in place? Well, we need to agree on the price with each other, right? And so if we Brexit, we need to talk to the Americans. And the problem we've got is, let me put it into real simple for you, Taylor. Imagine you agree on a price with a lorry person selling you that lorry, and then when you go to buy it, another chap comes along and says, nah, sorry, I don't agree with that price. You say, I've just agreed on the price with the guy selling it. He says, well, he might be selling it to you, but I'm his dad, and I'm saying no. Right, now you've got a situation where we're going to agree with President Trump on a trade deal, and the leader of Congress, who need to approve the deal, they have a veto over it. The leader of Congress, Nancy Pelosi, is saying, if you break the Good Friday Agreement, we're not going to agree a deal with you. What do you do in that situation, Taylor?
Yeah, but you're just making it more complicated than it is. Like, this is a problem. We're going to no deal Brexit, and everybody's just making these sort of problems. We need to do it and get on with it, you know? Like, what's the point of fighting now to get another deal?
Because, Taylor, the real world is complicated, Taylor.
I know.
And so I've just presented a real scenario to you of people and what they've really said. What do you do in that situation?
You negotiate, obviously.
You sorry?
You negotiate.
Yeah, which takes how long? Back to my original question. How long does it take to negotiate a trade deal?
I don't really understand the question because, like, you've got to be in that situation to do it, haven't you?
Well, and we have done it before, and countries have done it before, and they usually take about 5 to 7 years, trade deals, to negotiate. Do you know the TTIP one with Canada? 5 years. You know the one that EU did with Russia? 7 years. That's roughly how long trade deals take to negotiate, because they are incredibly complicated things. So we don't have that time. We have a month.
What I was on about is people are scared.
Well, yes. Yes, because of what I just said, Taylor. We've got a month to negotiate something that takes 5 years usually. Theresa May took 3 years to try and get approved a withdrawal agreement, which wasn't a trade agreement. That took 3 years, Taylor. And you think we can do all this in a month?
Yeah, because why are like, say, for example, France. Let's talk about France, yeah? If I want to go to take my lorry to France right now, go to a food manufacturer and take a load of food from them, obviously buy it, why would they refuse me to take that money? Because they'd be losing profit.
All right. I think we're in danger of going around in circles, Taylor. I would ask you to think just carefully about the fact that it took Theresa May 3 years to negotiate a withdrawal agreement. It took us roughly 5 years to negotiate a deal with Canada that we ended up not signing, the TTIP free trade deal. Of course, you think we can do this all in a month. And so I just bury my head in my hands sometimes and marvel at the sheer amount of bolshy confidence on display. It's not the world. The world doesn't do our bidding just because we puff our chests out and bang our fists on our chest like Tarzan and scream ah, and then fly through the jungle and think everyone is just going to agree with us. Unfortunately, there isn't a Jane at the end of that swing waiting to receive us with open arms. Unfortunately. Thanks anyway, Taylor. Brian wants to speak to us from Oxford. Tell us what you think, Brian.
Oh, hi, Nod. Paid taxes for 40 years.
Okay.
Why should someone be able to just come straight into this country and get exactly the same treatment as me when they haven't paid a penny in? Do you think that's fair?
Sorry,
and as regards the
Brian, well, let me answer your question, Brian. No, hold on. Let me answer your question, Brian. Sorry, what did you say?
Do you really think she'd want that baby after being raped?
Well, I suggest to you, Brian, that's not a decision that you have a right to make.
Oh, I know. I'm not making a decision. I'm asking the question.
Brian, you know what? I'm not actually. The fact that you've even asked that is so shocking that I'm actually going to ignore your first question.
You are a drama queen, aren't you? Really?
And address the second point you've just made. So you think?
No, just the first point.
No, don't tell me what to do, Brian. Don't tell me. No, Brian. Brian. No, Brian. You don't tell me what to do. You've said something that I find absolutely disgusting, and I'm going to address it. You think it's appropriate after a woman has been detained against the advice of doctors after being raped and trafficked, and doctors are telling the Home Office that she's miscarrying and needs to stay in the hospital, and they ignore the doctors and detain her anyway, and she miscarries in detention, and you think the first question that comes to your mind is, did she want the baby? That's the first question that comes to your mind? Suggesting and implying that the baby was clearly anyway as a result of rape and therefore unwanted, and therefore what's the problem that she miscarried? That your mind goes there rather than first wondering why on earth the Home Office didn't listen to the advice of the doctors. Let's just take, for example, hypothetically, let's just say, as is probably going on in your callous little mind, let's just say she didn't want the baby. You don't know that, you haven't asked her, but let's just imagine she didn't. If somebody doesn't want a baby, is the first thing they do walk to a jail cell and say, lock me up because I choose to have a miscarriage in your prison? I mean, what kind of absurd questioning is that, Brian? Seriously, please respond to that. You know, justify what you just asked.
My response is, why do you think people that pay taxes can come into the country and get the same treatment?
That's not the question I asked you, Brian. Address the question I directly asked you just now.
About what?
Were you listening?
Not really, not about the Vietnamese woman, because I just made a little point about it, that was all.
You said, do you really think she wanted the baby? And I'm asking you that even if on the assumption that somebody didn't want the baby that was born of rape, which you don't know because it's none of your blooming business, but even on the assumption that she didn't want the baby, do you really think a woman chooses to miscarry while in jail rather than under medical care?
Was she in jail, was she?
She was in detention, Brian.
Yeah, well, because she was illegal.
No, she wasn't. The Home Office have accepted she was trafficked and have granted her asylum.
Yeah, well, the Home Office is full of a lot of lovers, isn't it? So that's the trouble.
Well, you'd rather they're full of people like you, yeah?
Well, I'd rather there were people that investigate things properly, because you'll find a lot of women coming in that have been raped. An awful lot. So how can you believe that straight away?
No, but Brian, we're talking about a case where they have believed it. They've apologised, paid £50,000 in compensation, and granted her asylum, and put in place measures, they say, to try and avoid committing such an error again in the future. They're not disputing the case here. They've accepted mea culpa, that it was their fault. So why are you defending the Home Office in this situation, Brian?
Because I am defending the Home Office in that situation. They just went with protocols, didn't they? Anyway, answer my first question.
Brian, you haven't answered. I asked you directly whether, even if you think she wanted to terminate the baby, that's usually done usually chosen by women to do so in detention, or rather, does one go to a hospital or seek medical advice, or does one decide if they want to terminate a pregnancy? I know. Let me go and sit in a detention centre and have a miscarriage while I'm locked up in a room with no medical support and no company.
Well, she's got 50 grand now. She can do what she likes, can't she? So.
All right, okay. This is absolutely unbelievable. Brian, you know what? Seriously, if you're saying you've been paying taxes for 40 years, then I imagine you must be at least around the age of 55, 60. And if you haven't learned compassion and you know, to love your fellow human being in difficult circumstances by now, I'm not sure what I can say to you to change your mind. So thank you very much, but have a good day, and I hope I never speak to you again.
Malcolm has called from Finchley. Hi, Malcolm.
Good afternoon, Sheila. I might observe that every word that Simon's just uttered, I totally agree with.
Okay.
That's common sense speaking, right there.
Okay. And you rang to say more than that, I know.
Oh no, I know that. Well, it's to do with the terminology being used. The first one is the continual use of the word deal. This is not a deal. It's a treaty. And it's the treaty, the contents of that. I would advise all your listeners to do a little bit of research online and look up the Attorney General's letter. And I'll paraphrase the final sentence. It actually says, I'll summarise it. It says that there is no international mechanism for this country to leave those protocols unless there is an agreement. In other words, unless the EU agree to that. So that's the first point.
That was paragraph 19, wasn't it, that you're talking about?
That's
that
right.
Everybody
and it means that, and this is what annoys me about that letter from Boris Johnson. It's not good enough to use the word undemocratic. He should explain to the people why it's undemocratic. And that's what I'm mentioning now. That document, to a criminal standard of proof, was not made or prepared by Theresa May or Ollie
Robbins.
Ollie Robbins. It wasn't made by him. That was a document that indisputably was prepared by the EU with the intention of locking us into Europe permanently. And it's a sly document. It's a dishonest document.
But it was designed by the UK. What makes you say the opposite?
Because the wording and the timing.
Well, what's your proof for that? It was actually regarded as a bit of a win for the UK.
Well, let me go back historically about it. On the two occasions when Theresa May had the courtesy to even show that document or parts of it to her own cabinet, none of them had seen it before. She ambushed them. And as soon as they read the contents of it, but a lot of them resigned.
Tell me this. Tell me this in your online research into all of this, which is great that you're doing, and I think we should all do more. The Geoffrey Cox, the paragraph that people homed in on was paragraph 19 that you've outlined about no internationally lawful means of leaving the protocol, leaving the backstop, save by agreement, i.e. we wouldn't have a unilateral right to leave it. But there were other paragraphs in that document as well.
We've got to concentrate on that is this. That treaty says that we've got to pay them $39 billion on the basis of a trade agreement to do with something in the future that will be agreed with best.
Well, hang on, you've moved on. You've moved on here. Let's leave. No, you are. Leave the $39 billion for a second, because there's something I want to concentrate on first. No, to you.
Concentrating on the relevance of this.
No, but there's some. Mark, and you must let me speak. You've raised what Geoffrey Cox said about the inability to leave unilaterally, but at the same time, in the same document, the joint instrument. Remember that the joint instrument that was agreed afterwards, a substantive and binding reinforcement. It was described as of the UK's legal rights in the backstop. The arbitration body, the independent arbitration body that will be there to stop the whole idea of Britain ever being trapped in the backstop. That has to count for something as well, Malcolm.
But then the magic word there, the two words, are good faith. And Geoffrey Cox was right to mention that. I don't see any good faith in the negotiating stance of the European Union. They always play hardball. That's common knowledge. If there is going to be a deal, it'll be at the last minute. But that's not the point. The point is, right now, without the $39 billion, they're earning £250 million a week. So I'll give you an analogy. If I was doing a business deal with you, and the deal means both sides of that agreement benefit both parties, I give you $39 billion. What do I get for it? We don't know. It's in the promised land. It's jammed tomorrow.
But those are commitments that have already been made, Malcolm. Those are duties that we have already as members of the EU. Arguably, you clearly disagree with me, but I'm putting that out there. Malcolm, thank you very much indeed for your call. That's Malcolm in Finchley.
At the weekend, we had a leak of the government's thinking about a no-deal Brexit in Operation Yellowbelly, and that doesn't make me happy. I'm quite cross about that, and would rather be trusted with the information released officially, and then, we could all make up our own minds. Andy in Reading, am I wrong?
How dare you hesitate? Evening. I listen to LBC every day from 4 a.m. when I get in my lorry till I've just finished work now. I say I'm a middle-class person and do not understand the ethics of this whole thing, because there's a lot of scary, like we're going to be starving, we're going to run out of this, I'm going to lose my job. But I mean, when are people just going to be honest to see really what's going to happen?
I appreciate you've been working all day, Andy. Did you get a chance to actually read the detail of Yellowhammer yesterday?
No, not at all.
Well, there you are.
I'm not a reader, I'm more of a listener. But every day I listen to LBC, and I mean from 4 a.m. when I get in my car until probably 4 p.m. when I get out of it. So I've listened to it for the last 3 to 4 months and still don't understand it's just like children bickering over a packet of tweets or something.
Well, that's sort of my point, Andy, because the government has compiled this report. It is worth a read. You can find it online, click through and have a read of it, and draw your own conclusions. And my concern is, I mean, it's not a report that, could be read out on the radio. That would take a long time. But my concern is we only know about this because somebody, perhaps for their own reasons, decided to leak it. And I think that stinks.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously they've leaked it for a reason, because obviously it can't scare me, because I haven't really...
Well, you haven't read it?
No, I haven't read it. But, I've heard chits and chats about what it's got in it, which is something's going to happen anyway. So why are they not preparing for it, or why are they trying to scare people into it?
Well, or Andy, my question, why can't they just tell us? Why do we have to find out through a journalistic leak? I mean, it's great journalism. Congratulations to the Sunday Times. Thanks to them, we know. But otherwise, we'd be in the dark.
Why is there not been a debate on TV about the bad side and the good side? So everybody can be really clear about what's going on. Why does it have to be leaked onto a national newspaper? Some people don't read the Daily Times.
Exactly.
A lot of people read the Sun in the Mirror. So why was it not leaked to a paper where more people read? Then obviously you've got your... I don't know, we call them upper class that read that, and then you've got your middle class like the Sun in the Mirror and stuff like that. So why wasn't it leaked to them?
Well, that's another angle, Andy. Liam is in Liverpool. Hi, Liam. Would you like this information to be released officially?
Not really, no, to be honest with you. I hear what you're saying, Eddie. I get what you're saying, but, it's like... Police friend of mine will say to me, if you knew how many police were on duty of a night time, you wouldn't sleep in your bed. And I think you can just go straight through governments. And I know the hot topic is Brexit, and I get that. So I think leaked documents are leaked documents. I mean, I think what Rod said there is absolutely fantastic, the way he's just spoken. I think he's summed up for business, and I'm in business as well.
What do you do, Liam?
He's summed up. Clothing importer.
So this is right on your doorstep. This is very important to you.
Yeah, and I voted to leave as well.
So what do you know about a no-deal Brexit?
Well, like I said to you ago when I phoned up, my biggest problem is the cry wolf situation. And I think, as Rod has quite rightly made a very, very good point there, is the fact that we need to get on and we need to deal with the issues that are there. And unfortunately, we've had 3 years of fighting the results of referendum. And that has not helped us. And I don't want to get into name calling, because I really love listening to Remainers, and I like listening to debate the ins and outs of it. But what Rod said is absolutely fantastic, and a lorry driver before him as well. We've got to move on. We've got to find ways to make this work.
Yeah, but we need to be informed to do that, Liam, don't we?
We need to be informed, but what we don't need is the Whitehall speculation for your eyes only documents. We do need to be informed. And I think the two things are very different, and I think the forms that need to be filled in, your previous caller Rob was talking about how things are going to happen abroad, that need to be things. What we don't need to be hearing is the speculation side of things that come out. That's their job. That's what they should be doing. And as I say, I think there's a lot more of those that go on day to day with things that we don't,
Well, there are practicalities, which Rod was talking about, of course, but it's also government's job to assess how no-deal Brexit, and anything else for that matter, is going to affect all of us, which is what this leak was telling us.
I do. And
it's not speculation, it's information, isn't it?
Well, no, it's not. It's speculation, because the problem and the purpose for my phone call, for phoning up, is what really, really has annoyed me about the whole of this thing is that who do you want to trust? Do I want to really trust that document? Should I have trusted George Osborne when he told us we were going to lose 800,000 jobs?
Liam, that is exactly the point I was making right at the start of the programme. We need to have, because we don't have all of this information. I said right at the start, I want to know who's written the report. I want to know what its sources were. I want to know all of that. I want it to be officially released so that people can make their own judgment. Now, if your position is, I'm never going to believe anything government says, then we need to end the conversation.
No, we don't, because the thing about it is when somebody, you've got to make decisions, and you have people to make those decisions. We need to be, as citizens of the UK, what we need is quite rightly, we need to be informed on leaving the Brexit and what's going to happen. The problem is we've spent 3 years fighting the democracy. Of the democratic of things. We've not allowed the situation to curtail into a deal. as yet. We still don't know. We've got a new government that's only a few weeks old that's basically we're out on the 31st of October. And that's primarily, as Rod has said, quite rightly, and other people are saying the same, there's been a hell of a lot of work done since that report's been written and published.
Well, about 2 weeks ago it was put together, apparently.
3 weeks. But people are saying there's still a lot of work being done.
Yeah,
Liam,
I would like an update every week. I'd like an update on Operation Yellow. But why not?
Because how big's that document? Just tell the listeners how big it is.
You can have the whole document, and then you can update it every week as more information comes in. I mean, what's so wrong? What's so shocking about that?
Nothing, because you would read it, and I would read it. But I tell you now, there's so many other people that aren't interested.
Fine. Let them be bored. Let them be uninterested. I don't care. That's their funeral. I want the information, and I don't want it leaked.
Well, you're not going to get the eye.
Probably not. But I'm going to damn well ask.
Lots of other things other than Brexit that just don't come out. And when leaked documents come out, they always come out because people leak them and they get leaked for a reason.
Yes, exactly. Wouldn't dispute that.
Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, we have to just. You'd never be happy with the information because there's always a question. Well, what about this or what about that?
Of course, but we'd be in a position to judge. We'd be in a position to judge and not from a leak.
What difference is that going to make? Honestly, what difference is it going to make, Eddie? It's not going to make any difference if somebody turns around and saying, "Oh, well, you know what? Now I tell you what, should we just go back and not?"
Well, I'm sorry, Liam. I just don't think ignorance is bliss. Liam, thank you. Good to hear from you.
Andy wants to speak to us from Orpington. Tell us what you think, Andy.
Just a point, really. You've made it very clear how experienced Dominic Grieve is, which I completely understand and agree, and he has a very high reputation. But you compared it with the knowledge of Boris as a journalist and Mr. Cummings as, I'm not quite sure the terminology used.
Campaigner.
Correct. That they would their experience in these matters are far less than Dominic Grieve's. But surely Boris and Dominic Cummings would have taken opinions and advice at the very highest level.
Well, it's a leap of faith, isn't it, Andy? That's a leap of faith.
Sorry?
That's a bit of a leap of faith, isn't it?
Well, I'd have thought...
Do you think Mr. Johnson took opinion and advice from the highest levels when he said F business?
Well, I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just making a point.
No, you're not. You're just making an assertion I'm questioning. I'm trying to argue with you. I'm not hiding from the facts. I'm trying to challenge the assertion. No, but you are. This is a debate show. No, you've come on this show and you've suggested that Mr. Johnson has taken advice before he's opened his mouth. And I'm not so sure that's correct. And that's why I'm questioning you on it. Allow me to question you on an assertion you've made on national radio. You're saying the Prime Minister would have taken advice before saying that Parliament cannot stop a no-deal Brexit. I'm asking you how you know that, and I'm responding with a different example, and I'm wondering whether you also think the Prime Minister took advice when he said F business, whether he took business advice in that regard.
You would know as well.
Did you just carry on speaking all the way through my question, Andy? And you're saying you're not trying to argue.
This is something that you do on a regular basis.
Well, Andy, the thing is, it happens to be my show, and you happen to be my guest, and I happen to be the host. And therefore, after happening to make an assertion, I happened to question your assertion, and it would be wonderfully courteous of you if you actually responded to the point I made, which was in response to the actual point you made, rather than ignore me, because I could have done the same thing. I could have just completely ignored your opening assertion and then just carried on speaking on an unrelated topic. But I didn't. I directly addressed the point that you made. And so I'd like you, please, to respond to my direct addressing of your direct point.
Well, as you usually do, you're going round in circles. You know full well what I'm saying.
No, I don't. Could you please answer the question? We have got to go to the news. I'm going to give you one last chance. I don't understand why people think this works on my show. It doesn't work. I'm not going to allow you to filibuster. I'm not going to allow you to strawman. I'm not going to allow you to red herring any topic. The specific assertion you made was that Mr. Johnson would have taken advice before saying Parliament cannot stop no-deal Brexit. So I asked you a specific response to that assertion in a form of a question, which was the following. Do you think he took advice when he said from business, when he said F business?
That wasn't my question.
No, that was my question anyway. Thank you. I did say I'd give you one more chance. You didn't try and answer it. Thank you for calling in. John wants to speak to us from Hendon. Tell us what you think, John.
Hello there. Yeah, before I get to your main point, could I ask you why you never mention the state of Europe? It's always positive, anti-British, and it was never mentioned that there's so many difficulties in Europe. they're involved in staying there would be a negative. It's always put one way around. If we leave, we'll be in terrible trouble. Could you just answer that before I answer your main point, please?
Well, I concede there are difficulties in Europe, but I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think that staying in causes us more troubles than leaving with no deal on the 31st of October. And
you also made the point to somebody a few minutes ago that people didn't vote for no deal. And I've heard this over and over and over again. But the withdrawal agreement is not the deal. The deal that people were thinking of was a trade deal, surely.
Well, either way, they didn't vote for no deal, did they?
No, but the no deal's been brought about by the Remainers. So, in other words...
Well, that's one view of it, one interpretation.
Imagine like you're driving a car and you come to a crossroads.
It's a bit revisionist.
Say, I'm going to turn right, and the person next to you says, no, we're going to turn left. The car doesn't know which way it's going.
Indeed, but John, the people that voted in Parliament against Theresa May's deal weren't just Remainers. I remember specifically the European Research Group and Jacob Rees-Mogg and the entire hard Brexit faction also opposed Theresa May's deal. So when you say the people that stopped Theresa May's... So when you say Theresa May's deal was stopped by Remainers, that's not accurate, is it? It was stopped by the majority of people in Parliament that rejected her deal.
Yes, but now it's the Remainers that are stopping us possibly getting a deal by bluffing about the no deal, by saying, no, we're not going to allow a no deal.
So are you seriously suggesting that between now and the 31st of October, there is time, using your bluff example, that there is time for Mr. Johnson to go in with bluff and hot air and bluster and strike a deal within a month's time that Theresa May couldn't do in 3 years?
Yes, I mean, Mrs. Merkel herself said it yesterday.
You think a month's time is enough time to negotiate?
She said we can move very quickly when we want to.
OK, consider this then, John.
Do you remember that?
Consider this then. Who is he going to negotiate with? Because if you recall, striking a deal now does require the permission, the consent of each one of the 29 members of the European Union. And the European Commission does not reconvene until, guess when? One day after Brexit Day, the 1st of November.
If they want to do it, they will do it. If it's necessary, they'll put the clock back. It may just go over.
Right, so if they stop the clock back, that means stopping no deal on the 31st of October, which is precisely what I'm saying Parliament has the power to do, and Mr. Johnson is saying it doesn't. So you agree with me?
No, I don't think... I think technically you may be right, but practically, I've just been looking at an article from the Financial Times from 2 days ago. It would be very, very difficult. They'd have to replicate the Oliver Letwin, Yvette Cooper bill.
Yes, but that would require the special permission. It would require special permission from the Speaker of the House, but he has intimated... He has already intimated that he's prepared... John, he's already intimated that he's prepared to grant such special permission.
Yeah, but it's still very difficult to get it through in the time. This is the point of the article.
To get what through? If you win a motion of no confidence, which currently Boris Johnson only has a majority of 1, so it's not impossible to conceive that Parliament could win a motion of no confidence. In that scenario, 14 days are triggered to select a new government. During those 14 days, as Mr. Dominic Grieve suggested, primary legislation could be put forward if the Speaker of the House allows it. He's indicated already publicly that he would allow for such a thing. If primary legislation is put forward in that 14-day period, with Boris Johnson only having a majority of 1, and with, second fact, with Parliament already having indicated through an indicative vote that there is a huge majority in Parliament against a no-deal scenario, why is it unlikely that that could unfold?
Because I don't think the Cooper-Letwin bill is a vote of no confidence. It's another way it's giving power to the House to take control. But there is hardly time to do that. They did it last time because they had more time. The vote of confidence may or may not go, one way or the other. But a lot of people are very opposed to the idea of Corbyn becoming Prime Minister.
Well, that doesn't necessarily mean Corbyn becomes Prime Minister. If you put forward a vote of no confidence, and if, for example, hypothetically, a Ken Clarke figure came along, what it would require is for the majority of the Parliamentary Labour Party to realise that the rest of the political parties in Parliament that they need to force Mr. Johnson to stand down on this no-deal situation wouldn't rally behind Mr. Corbyn, so they would have to overcome their egos and back whoever their temporary leader is other than Mr Corbyn. It could be Ken Clarke, it could be Dominic Grieve, it could be any number of figures. Keir Starmer.
Yes, but Corbyn is not willing to relinquish his first...
Yeah, indeed, you're right. Yeah, Mr Corbyn may not be. I'm wondering whether his backbench parliamentarians take a slightly different view. At least I hope they do. Thank you very much, John, for calling in from Hendon. Anti-abortion campaigners have been told that the country's first buffer zone outside a clinic in West London can stay. They've lost a legal challenge at the Courts of Appeal where they've argued that the 100-metre cordon was against their human rights on freedom of expression. But Ealing Council wanted the buffer zone at the Mair Stopes Centre to remain, saying it protects vulnerable women from harassment. Well, the right to be free from harassment won out over the right to protest. Now, of course, they may continue to protest, but outside of the 100-metre buffer zone. Campaigners are saying that this is an issue that needs to be addressed nationally because currently it rests with local councils to enforce these buffer zones to protect women, vulnerable women who are going in for abortions and protect them from harassment. And so campaigners are saying there should not be a postcode lottery for these women. It should be something that can be enforced nationally. And we've been taking calls on this over the course of the last hour. We succeeded, by the way, in getting through the hour with only women callers on this, a fact of which I'm very proud. And I think we had about 4 or 5 first-time callers who are women, and we've got another one waiting who is Rebecca from Barnet. Bear with us, Rebecca, because I did promise Brendan, the first man to have a say during at least this debate on my show, that I'd come back to him after the news, and so he's been waiting very patiently from Paddington. Tell us what you think, Brendan. Go for it.
Hi, Maajid. Yeah, I'd like to say that it's not like a religious opinion that abortion is murder, because it's a fact, it's a scientific fact that human life starts at conception. It's not a religious belief.
It's a scientific fact. Okay, how's that true? Tell us where the science is on that.
Well, because at the moment of conception, a new individual is in existence, and from that point on, that is the beginning of that new life.
Yeah, I know that's your opinion, Brendan. You are asserting that opinion, but you've said to me it's a scientific fact.
Maajid, it's a fact. It's a scientific fact.
I'm trying to understand why you think it's a scientific fact. So there's no use repeating your opinion to prove it's a scientific fact. I'm asking you for the science. Which scientist that you support has said such a thing, or indeed are you a scientist?
Well, they had a survey of scientists, I think about quite recently, and they asked them, when does mammalian life begin? I think about 98% of them said it begins at conception.
Could you reference that, please? Footnote, reference?
See, the thing is, look, it's a scientific fact. I mean,
I know you keep saying it's a scientific fact. I'm asking you for proof.
Yeah, but how I could say something, and then you would say, oh, well, you'd want more proof. But this is the thing.
No, I just want one piece of proof. This is
the thing, like, the standard of evidence suddenly goes much higher because we're living in a corrupt country. That's the thing.
Oh, what's corrupt about this country?
We're living in for a start, they kill 500 children every day.
Who does?
Our country, the government. The government has legalised the murder of children.
So let me ask you this, Brendan. If I was... Let me put a scenario to you and I want your response. If I was in this studio here, where it's just me at the moment, alone, and my producers are sitting opposite me and I can see them, thankfully, through a glass screen... if I'm here alone in this studio and you were in here with me and somebody was trying to murder you and I had the power, let's say they were trying to murder you, I hope that this doesn't happen to you, but let's say they were trying to murder you with a knife, but I had a gun and I had the power to stop them. Is it my civic duty to physically stop that person murdering you?
It is, yeah.
And I would be perfectly entitled to use force to as necessary, proportionately, to stop them murdering you, yes?
Yeah.
Right. So if you think 500 children are being murdered a day, then surely, by that logic, you should be going around physically forcing doctors and hospitals to stop murdering children.
No, because it wouldn't work, because I just get put in prison.
Yeah, can't you see, therefore, that your position is a bit extreme?
How is my position extreme?
Well, you're calling it murder.
You're
calling it murder. That's a bit extreme, surely, because if it was murder, you'd be morally obliged to stop the murder of children.
No, because it's a scientific fact that life begins at conception.
Well, I know you've said that, but I'm wondering where's your evidence?
That's why it's murder.
Brendan, are you a religious man?
I am, yeah.
Well, what's your religious faith?
But that is irrelevant. That is a genetic fallacy.
Your religious faith is a genetic fallacy?
Yeah, if you're trying to say, depending on what my religious faith is, that somehow makes it different, it doesn't.
Well, no, why are you embarrassed of your religious faith? I'm asking you simply what your religious faith background is.
To going down a red herring route.
Well, no, I'm not. It's clearly relevant to you informing the opinions you hold. So what is your religious faith? Unless you're embarrassed of God.
It's a scientific fact.
Are you embarrassed of God, Brendan?
And it's a moral fact that it's murder to kill innocent human beings.
Brendan, are you embarrassed that you believe in God?
No, because you're trying to, again, deflect down a red herring route.
Well, it's not a red herring if it informs your opinion. So what is your religious faith background?
Well, why do you want to know that?
As I just said, because it informs your opinion. What is your... You've taken a stance that abortion is murder, and you've told me you're religious. It's quite, intuitive that your religious beliefs, therefore, will impact that statement that abortion is murder. So I'm wondering what your religious beliefs are. What's the denomination you subscribe to?
Ever since I've known about abortion, I've believed that it was wrong.
Right, okay, but why are you embarrassed to tell us what your religion is? Are you embarrassed of your religion, Brendan?
I'm not, no. See, because
so why
you're
don't you just
trying
tell
to
us?
Dodge the issue.
I'm not. I'm trying to have a conversation with you, and I will build on it.
See, look, you're losing the argument on abortion.
It's Brendan, I can assure you. I'm not the one who keeps repeating that it's a scientific fact without any evidence. So I'm trying to wonder if the Bible is your evidence. Is the Bible evidence for you?
So, okay, then when does life start then?
I don't know.
Because
I don't know.
Yesterday,
I don't know the answer to that question, Brendan. Brendan,
you were calling an 8-week-old a baby.
Brendan, I do not know the answer to that question, and I'm wondering how you know the answer to the question. And I'm wondering whether
it's a scientific fact.
You keep saying that, but you keep saying it's a scientific fact without evidence, which is why I'm wondering if you're religious, and you said yes. And so, why are you embarrassed to tell me what your religion is?
I gave you evidence.
Which is?
I gave you evidence.
What's the evidence?
I said when the sperm and the egg they fuse together and their conception, that is the beginning of a new human life.
Brendan, I'm sorry to break it to you, but repeating your position, simply reasserting a hypothesis that you've started with as evidence for the hypothesis, is otherwise known as a circular argument. If I start off by saying Maajid is the coolest guy on earth, and you say to me, well, what's your evidence, Maajid? And I say, well, because Maajid says he's the coolest guy on earth. And you say, well, what's your evidence for that? I say, well, because I said I am. That's a circular argument, right? It's a bit like saying Jesus is the word of God. You can say, okay, what's your proof? Well, because it's in the Bible. Well, how do you know the Bible's from God? Well, because Jesus said it is. Okay, well, how do you know Jesus is God? Well, because the Bible says he is. It's a circular argument, Brendan. So there's no use you saying it's a scientific fact that abortion is murder and life begins at conception, when upon being challenged, you go around in circles and just say, well, because life begins at conception. I'm asking you to justify your assumption, your hypothesis, your assertion, not repeat it. So one more time. What is your evidence for asserting that life begins at conception?
Because when the sperm and the egg fuse together, that is the beginning of a new human life. And
yourself.
That is irrefutable.
You're just repeating it. You're saying it's irrefutable. It doesn't make it irrefutable just because you say so.
So how am I supposed to prove it then?
Well, it's interesting, Brendan, because the scientific method it's so fascinating. It's not on me to disprove an assertion you're making. It's on you to prove it. If I say to you, I am the best thing since sliced bread, you don't have to believe me until you disprove it. I have to convince you I am, right? So you're telling me something. It's not on me to disprove your assertion. I don't know when life begins. I've already given you my answer. I do not know. You're telling me you know. You're saying you know it begins at conception. So I'm asking you to prove that. If you want me to follow you, either prove it by proving your religious beliefs to me, or prove it by proving it through science. But you're doing neither at the moment.
Now, how do you want me to prove it then?
By showing me the science.
Well, how do I show you the science over the phone?
You can speak me through it. You can speak to me through about the research that's been done.
I've just spoken you through it.
Right, the research?
And you won't accept it.
Yep. Have you cited any scientists?
See, that is the fallacy of authority. If I said I could just come up with some name now, and it wouldn't necessarily make it true.
No, it wouldn't. But to talk about the fallacy of authority, don't you rely on God as an authority for your views?
No, I don't. I'm not using God. I'm not using God. I
didn't
science.
say you are using God. I said, do you not rely on God as an authority for your views in general?
No, I don't.
Oh, you're not religious then?
I use reason.
You're not religious?
No, it's my reason that tells me that God exists.
And what did God reveal to you? Which book?
See, this is getting away from the question. I phoned up.
It's not. Why are you embarrassed about your religious beliefs, Brendan? Why are you hiding your religious beliefs? Are you embarrassed? Are you embarrassed?
Change the subject?
Well, I'm not, because everybody can hear you, Brendan, and knows that your religious beliefs are informing your assertion that is unscientific, that life begins at conception. So I'm wondering which religion you subscribe to.
You're saying that where is your evidence that it's unscientific?
Because you haven't proven it's scientific. That's how the empirical method works.
No, it's a fact that when the egg and the sperm join together, that is the beginning of a new human life.
I know, it's really interesting, Brendan. If you were in school and I was your teacher and I just said, it's a fact that you're wrong, and you said, well, how am I wrong? Well, it's just a fact you are. That's not going to help progress the conversation, isn't it, Brendan? I can't just keep repeating an assertion. You're telling me life begins at conception. I ask you to prove it. You say, well, it's a fact.
A new genetic code begins at that moment, that new genetic thing, and that is when, from that point, there is an indivisible human life, and it grows all the way to adulthood. That is the beginning of its growth.
So if a woman is raped, Brendan, do you think that she should be allowed to abort or not?
No, she shouldn't.
So she should be forced to have a baby even if she's raped?
Because it's a human being, and no innocent human being should be killed because of what someone else did.
Okay, and if a woman, if the pregnancy is going to endanger the woman's health, should she be allowed to abort or not?
It's never necessary to abort a baby to either for the mother's health or to save a mother's life. The baby can be delivered. It never, ever has to be aborted.
So what's your answer? So the answer is, even if it's endangering the woman's health, she should not be allowed to abort?
Because abortion isn't necessary. It's not necessary to... abortion is not necessary to save a mother's health or her life. And that is a medical fact.
Oh, it's another fact you're asserting. Wow, Brendan. By the way, have you ever? So, last question for you: have you these scientific facts you're asserting? Have you studied science? What's your scientific expertise?
I've studied these issues. Yes.
Yeah, but no, science. Which scientific university did you graduate from? What's your scientific qualification?
I don't need. See, you're trying to raise the bar now.
No, I'm not.
No one else has to meet these sort of. No one else has to.
You're telling me something that you're asserting as a scientific fact. I'm wondering, have you studied human biology? Have you studied human biology, Brendan?
I've studied the biology of when life begins, yes.
The biology of when life begins. That's an interesting new topic, which usually people would consider as philosophy. But anyway, Brendan, thank you for that very enlightening call. I think I am now very much wiser when it comes to human biology because you said so. That was Brendan there from Paddington. With regards to the last caller, Brendan, we've got a tweet here from Awatha who says, it's a scientific fact. The people that use the phrase, it's a scientific fact, don't know the first thing about science or facts. It's, lots of you reacting to the last caller. Sean Hugh Phillips, who had a tweet in before the last caller, said people who are militantly anti-abortion are often oppressive when it comes to deciding on what you do with a fetus, but often have little interest in the child's welfare once born. Let's go to Patricia, who's also a first-time caller from Ealing. Tell us what you think, Patricia.
Yes, I'm a little nervous, so please bear with me.
Sure.
I look at this from a slightly different angle. Firstly, the United Kingdom has social welfare. If a woman doesn't want to have a child, I can respect that for whatever reason. It may be financial, rape, whatever reason, by accident. But there is an option in the form of social welfare. We would, raise the child, educate the child, provide health care.
What do you mean social welfare, Patricia? What do you mean social? What do you mean social? Do you mean orphanages?
Well, I'm talking orphanages. I'm talking about the country would not just throw a child in the street. The child would be looked after. So
children's homes and stuff like that.
The children's homes, yes.
Where children are incredibly vulnerable to drug addiction and sexual abuse.
Well, that's a problem for the state not dealing with it properly, but there are also many, obviously there's got to be very many good homes.
Are you religious, Patricia?
And you also, if I may please, it's a well-known fact that babies would be adopted a lot quicker than an older child, I'm sorry to say. Because everybody...
Patricia, are you religious?
I'm a Roman Catholic, but I wouldn't say I'm terribly religious.
But you oppose abortion?
I do oppose abortion because in this country there is an option.
No, yeah, I know. I've heard you say that, the option of social... But I'm wondering, how did that fare for the children under the care of the Catholic Church?
Pardon?
You're saying women don't need to abort because children will be looked after by the social services. And I'm asking you how that fared for the children who are under the protection of the Catholic Church.
It's fared very poorly. That's not the point, Maajid.
That's precisely the point, if I suggest to you, Patricia, that you've made. You've said women don't need to abort because children will be looked after anyway. And I'm suggesting to you that your argument falls apart because even if we begin, let's start with the Catholic Church, let alone government services, children clearly aren't looked after and haven't been looked after and have been spectacularly let down where they're meant to be looked after, whether by the church or indeed by the government.
You're absolutely right. I agree with you. But there's also, as I've mentioned, there is a desperate need of babies. I've watched enough documentaries to see people go to the other side of the world to adopt a newborn. And it's very sad that when children reach a certain age, they're sort of put to one side. I totally agree with you on that. But babies are in a different situation. My other point, if I may, women, when they say, I have the right to do with my body what I want to do, I agree with that. In that, if you want to go up a very tall building and jump off and kill yourself, that's you killing yourself. That's you taking a choice over your own body. But when a person has an abortion, Maajid, they're not killing themselves, they're killing somebody else.
Well, if I can put it to you, Patricia, that's your religious interpretation of what happens to a fertilized egg in the womb. The fact that you consider it a human being, you have every right to do so, and therefore every right to outlaw abortion for yourself. But what I would suggest to you is to take that absolutist position that human life, begins at conception, and to want to enforce that on every other woman in this country, I'd suggest to you is a bit of an absolutist position, don't you think, Patricia?
Watching on television.
Did you just carry on speaking while I put a question to you? Did we just end up with that again? Patricia, are you listening to my question?
Sorry, and if I may...
No, did you hear my question?
I did hear your question.
Could you answer it, please?
Talking in terms of religious, and I'm not saying... You're slightly putting words in my mouth. I'm not saying it's at conception, it's a human being.
What is it?
But when you see a scan of a fetus that has hands, feet, it has a pulsing heart, to me that's a human being.
Right, well, so Patricia, back to my question, please address it. I've asked you, is it not an absolutist position to enforce your religious belief on other women?
Religious... I'm sorry.
Whatever you believe, let's call it your fanciful belief then. But whatever you want to describe it as, your belief that life begins at conception, is it not an absolutist position to want to enforce that on every other woman who may not believe that life begins at conception?
I didn't say that at all.
Patricia, please listen to the question, please. If you believe life begins at conception, or indeed, whether or not you define it as life or you define it as a baby, if you believe that aborting a fetus is killing a baby and shouldn't be done, is it not an absolutist position to want to enforce that on every other woman?
No, it's not, because No, it's not, because you're denying the right of that child or baby or fetus, the living baby. You're denying that child the right to live. Whereas you're saying the mother has the right to do whatever they want.
Well, no, Patricia, no. You're assuming it is a child or a baby, and that's what I'm asking you. Is it not an absolutist position to insist that all other women in this country also view that fertilized egg in their womb as a child or a baby?
No, I don't believe No, I don't agree with you.
Right, so to want to have all other women toe the line and follow your opinion means you must have proof that fertilized egg in the womb is indeed a child or a baby. How you're defining it is how everybody else should define it. So what's your proof, Patricia? What's your proof?
So You're saying, Maajid, that if you're looking at a fetus with a pulsing heart, hands and feet and a head, is not a living...
Well, I'm not so
baby.
Sure that a fertilised womb has a pulsing heart.
I'm not talking about a
Well,
I'm
you
not
just
talking
did.
about a
You just did.
No,
okay, so is abortion allowed on day one? Patricia, is abortion allowed for you on day one of conception?
No, it's not.
Right, so that day one... That day one doesn't have a beating heart, so what's your point?
I think you're being very biased, and you're not allowing your speakers to talk. I'm sorry, but
Patricia, you've taken up you're pretty much the only call for this entire quarter of an hour segment. So when you say I'm not allowing speakers to speak, Brendan took up 15 minutes, and he took the view that abortion is murder. And now you've taken up this next 15-minute segment, and you're of the view that abortion is also killing. So it's not that I'm not allowing anti-abortionists to speak. Only 2 anti-abortionists have spoken for the entire half an hour so far. It's been you and Brendan. What I am insisting on, though, is that you answer the question. If your argument is that a beating heart and a pulse means it's life, and yet at the same time you're saying that a fertilised egg on day one, which doesn't have a beating heart and a pulse, cannot be terminated... Can you not see the contradiction? Day one of pregnancy, literally hour one of pregnancy, doesn't have a beating heart and a pulse, but you're still opposed to abortion in those circumstances. Why?
Well, you're obviously... we're not going to agree because you've just decided that it's just one point of view in your show.
No, Patricia, please answer the question, please. Please do me the courtesy of not speaking while a question is being put to you and then actually addressing the question. Is day one... of pregnancy, you're saying it's not okay to abort, and I'm wondering why. It doesn't have a beating heart or a pulse, does it? So why is it not okay to abort on day one of pregnancy?
It is still wrong because it's still alive.
How do you know? My question is, how do you know it's still alive?
Because it is.
How?
Maajid. You're just being picky and you're just being difficult, really. How do you make babies? A man and a woman get together, they have sex, the two join up, and one of them gets pregnant. Whether it's 6 months old or two days old or half
Patricia,
a cell...
it's the woman that gets pregnant. When a man and woman have sex, it's the woman that gets pregnant, not one of them.
Yeah, it's still alive. You're implying...
But what do you mean? You're insisting it's alive. I'm asking you to convince me it's alive. How do you know that day one of a fertilised egg in the womb is life? How do you know that, Patricia?
And you're making the assumption that it isn't.
No, I'm not making any claims. I'm saying I don't know. And because I don't know, I'm willing to be led and guided by experts, doctors, the government, and campaigners who are women. So you're telling me it is life. You're the one making the assertion. I'm asking you to prove your assertion.
I'm not a scientist, but you can get plenty of scientists that will say that it is.
Name me one.
I don't know them.
Well, then how do you know that
because I've watched enough documentaries in my 62 years.
Patricia, dear Patricia, you're calling...
plenty of them that have said...
Madam, you're calling a national radio show, making an assertion as fact. I'm asking you to back it up, and you're saying... I'm asking you to back up even with one scientist.
You back up your assertion that at the point of conception, it's not a human life.
I'm not making that assertion. I'm saying I don't know when human life begins, and therefore I'm leaving it to people that have considered this for most of their adult lives and who are experts on the topic, right? And so I'm asking you, I'm saying I don't have the answer. I'm not saying it's not human life, and because I don't know, I'm willing to be flexible on when abortion is allowed, because I can recognise it's a grey area. But you're
willing to be flexible at all. You have one point of view and everybody else is wrong.
Well, the one point of view being expressed here, Patricia, is that...
Because you're not proving that is not a life.
No,
you're asking me to prove, is it alive? Prove it, prove it.
That's right.
Well, you prove that it isn't.
I don't have to, because I'm not saying it isn't.
Well, yes, you are.
No, I'm not. I'm saying I don't know.
You're saying that it's not a baby. Prove it.
Well, I'm saying I don't know,
prove that
Patricia.
It isn't,
I'm saying I don't know when life begins in the womb. I genuinely don't know, and I'd be surprised if anyone knows. In fact, anyone who says they do know, genuinely, they've discovered something that I think would make them lots and lots and lots of money. And so I really want to learn the secret from them. If you have discovered the Holy Grail for when precisely life begins in the womb, wow, you could patent that discovery. You could copyright it. Everyone will be flocking to you for the secret. So, Patricia, you made a claim. I don't have the answer, but you've said you know when life begins, and that requires proof. Thank you for calling in there from Ealing.
Who looks set to lose more if we go to a no-deal Brexit, the EU or the UK? 0345 606 0973. Nick has called on this already from Croydon. Hello, Nick.
Oh, hello, Sheila. Why should either side lose more? Why should either side lose? It's only a forecast at this stage, estimates at this stage. No one truly knows what no deal will actually mean. And if people can see into the future with such perfect clarity, what will win the 3:30 at Haydock Park this afternoon? I'd love to know.
Well, I can confirm it will be a horse. You know, and that, but that I'm not joking. Well, I am joking a bit, but I'm joking in order to make a serious point that what we do know about no deal is that it's going to be tougher on everyone than making a deal.
How do we know that?
Because as a calm transition from one thing to another is as complicated as this is always a better outcome. It's about securing people's positions, people's lives, people's livelihoods. It's just common sense, Nick.
Except that we're in effectively a free trade agreement with the EU now. That is our effective status. Assuming there is no deal by October 31st, and also assuming between October 31st and November 1st, neither the EU nor ourselves impose tariffs on each other, then the effective situation between the EU and the UK hasn't changed, whether deal or not. So therefore, existing arrangements more or less continue. The same calmness continues. I don't see why, until material circumstances change, and there's no sign of material circumstances changing. The fact that there is no signed treaty doesn't make a heap of a difference.
Well, but things change if it's no deal, Nick, as things are, because we're still members, and then under the May deal we would have been transitional members, I suppose, as we left. I know all Brexiters out there will hate me hear it described that way, but it kind of is that way, or would have been had that deal got through. A no deal is different.
But how? How's it? Is different?
Because we're out. We're out of all the arrangements that we were ever in with them. That's how.
Have tariffs changed between October 31st and November 1st?
We'll find out, won't we?
Well,
it's the future, Nick. You can't say they haven't changed
yet. As far as we know. As far as we know, there are no plans for tariffs to be imposed between the EU and the UK on.
But it isn't just about tariffs. It isn't just about tariffs. It's about just-in-time deliveries. It's about provisions. It's about all kinds of things.
Customs union. Then taking that, we currently are in the customs union, obviously, and that means standards are currently aligned. Great. Unless standards change between October 31st and November 1st, then effectively the goods and services crossing the border between the EU and the UK haven't changed order.
Well, if what you say is true, you clearly see it that way, then why are we bothering even meeting one another between the EU and the UK and Ireland? Why meet? Just sit back, have a nice summer for the next couple of weeks. Do no deal. It's not going to make a blind bit of difference, except news just in. It would. Thank you, Nick. Chris has called from Stockwell before we go to the break. Hi, Chris.
How are you doing, Sheila? All right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, good. Right, well, I can see it getting very tit for tat. I can see that the will of the 17 million people as well was being underestimated. Right. UK been let's go back to England. Centre of commerce globally for a long time. Stiff upper lip, I believe, in Britain and all the rest of it. If Europe gives us a hard time, quite simply, we'll stop buying German cars. We'll stop buying Italian branded products. We'll stop buying, you know, and the win from that is the fact that obviously it gives a chance of British business to emerge, homegrown business.
What do you mean when you say stiff upper lip, I believe in Britain and all that? What do you mean when you say that?
Well, basically, all the fear-mongering that's gone on, you know, look, I don't care if the banking sector goes to France. Let them go. Not a problem. They've proved what they're all about, yeah? With regards to the value of the pound, well, it's only relative to spending the pound in England. I want to see British business grow. We need to bring manufacturing back to the UK, yeah? Well, you know, we're chasing 600 million European customers. We've got 60-odd million customers here. If I was
it's a bit smaller, though. That's a whole naught off that number there, isn't it? 600 to 60.
Yeah, well, no, but the point I'm getting at is...
I'm making a different one, that's all.
Apart from minor, which I think is going to be minor imports of real specialist materials. If Britain wants a legacy, let's revolutionise this country, right? Let's go green. Let's work on in the long run, free energy, free transportation, free communication. That can all come from existing technology.
Free.
Free.
What do you mean by free?
Well, quite simple. If the government changed housing development legislation to tell these super duper developers that are building 300, 400, 500 properties at a time, look, you need to use certain glass, you need to use certain insulation. Well, let's take it to the next step. You can't build houses unless they can generate 100% of their energy needs. In other words, a solar roof or a windmill at the back of the garden, right? So that's part of the way of networking the UK. Let's stop being blackmailed by the petrochemical companies, by the banking industry. And by the way, the banking industry should not re-inherit any of that PPI money that's left. They were punished because of the way they behaved. I want to see that money that's left build houses, employ doctors.
So you want to take British jobs for British services to the absolute nth degree?
Absolutely, because look. This country's suffering with an identity crisis, Shelagh, yeah? We've had so much in the way of a cultural mix. Now, I'm East London born and bred. My dad was from Cyprus, yeah? I don't know any different. I grew up in a very mixed class, okay? So I'm not racist. I love the world and I love people. What I will say is that we weren't ready for Europe yet, okay? Too much of a cultural mix, too many different ways of living your life coming together in such a way.
Too much of a cultural mix, but I can't stay long because we have an interview off the back of the break that I need to get to. But I just want to respond to what you said there. Too much of a cultural mix. I mean, hang on. If you grew up in the East End of London, Cypriot background, you'll know people from all kinds of backgrounds in the East End of London.
Absolutely,
that was driven by a couple of world wars. And so you should be. That was driven by a couple of world wars and I'm sure some other impacts as well. But this business of not ready for mixing, you know, But hang on. So we end freedom of movement on the 31st of October. No more new arrivals, and maybe sending a few people back.
It might be the end of free movement, but it's not the end of movement. We're still going to be globally aware. We're still going to.
But when we make these fabulous trade deals with Brazil and with India and with whoever else, they are going to come with deals on immigration and migration and movement of people. Are we ready for that?
Skittles down. We have to knock these skittles down.
What does that mean?
We can't deal with it all in all one go.
But what do you mean knock skittles down? Do you mean say to a doctor who's got the skills we need, awfully sorry, you're from India? No.
No, not at all. No, that's suicide. No. We've
been doing it, by the way, but there you go.
This was all the result of the guy that was watching the tap, the immigration tap, knowing that the sink was a certain size, he's let it overflow.
All right, I'm going to leave it there, Chris. Thank you very much. I have to, because we're going to speak to the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, in a moment, and we have a specific window in which to do that. Thank you for your call.